Always good to walk around with a pocket constitution. I have one here in my hands, chapter 2 of our South African constitution. It is the Bill of Rights, section 27.1. Everyone has the right to access to point B, sufficient food and water. Tomorrow is Human Rights Day in South Africa, so we're talking about water quality. What does water quality mean? Does clean potable water necessarily mean quality water, but also the water that you drink out of your tap when you're thirsty? Are you certain about the quality of that water? We're going to be speaking to Professor Kevin Winter. Is a researcher at the UCT's Future Water Institute. Myezo Poyo, he is the head of operations in bulk water in the city of Cape Town, and also Candice Jansen is a water sommelier. You may scoff a water sommelier, but I've been fascinated by her social media content, not only just talking about the varieties of bottled water you can buy, but also contents of minerals and all those other things that often go overlooked. So let me first start off with Associate Professor Kevin Winter. Kevin, lovely talking to you as always. First question, how good is our water here in the city of Cape Town in terms of international standards? What does quality drinking water mean to you, Kevin? Good morning.
Good morning, Lester. Well, first of all, I think we're very lucky to be in the city of Cape Town, given the sources of water that we draw in from, which is relatively clean reservoirs sitting in nature-based areas, as it were, up on the mountains. So that's at least the first start. We're drawing from clean water into our system. And the reports which we can see on the City of Cape Town's website, it's published both quarterly and also annual reports. Cape Town's blessed with a 99% clean bill of health, as it were, in terms of passing through SANS 241, which is our drinking standards, which covers bacteriological, physical aspects of water, chemical aspects of water. And the City of Cape Town regularly has achieved blue status certification from the Department of Water and Sanitation. So our water quality is extremely good. And I guess, if anything, the point that I should be making here is that bottled water, and let me just say that it's going to probably take listeners a little bit by fright here. Bottled water for me is a scam. We really don't need to be drinking bottled water. That's what I would call emergency water. And when we test bottled water, and I've done this regularly over the last little while, especially in giving talks in the last 2 or 3 weeks, when I take some samples of bottled water from the shelves and I compare that with even our spring water, like Newlands spring water, Cape Town city water would be hard to beat against all of that. So maybe that starts the discussion in terms of the detail that you want from there. But bear in mind, I think it's a scam in terms of using bottled water in Cape Town. We should not be getting that message. Not only do we have clean water, but we also have a problem when we have bottled water that finds its way into our rivers or into our landfills. That's just not on.
But many municipalities are unfortunate as the city of Cape Town. I have family in municipalities in this province, like Beaufort West, who's had to introduce more and more recycled water into their water system. I have family who don't drink municipal water because of the lack of quality. They're forced to go to the retail stores and the laundromats where they have this filtered water, and that's what they use for drinking and food consumption. But you could possibly lay out a layman's terms. What's the difference between hard and soft water? I would go to a municipality or a relative in other parts of the country and I would wash with that water, and I have difficulty creating a sud on my face cloth or my sponge as I'm trying to wash. What's the layman's definition of what we would term hard or soft water?
Well, let me give that to someone else to quickly answer here.
Well, let me then introduce Myezo Poyo, who is the head of operations in bulk water. He knows water from a domestic use point of view. What's the difference, Myezo, in hard and soft water that you may find in other parts of the country? Myezo?
Good morning, everyone. So there are different parameters in water that are being tested. So hard and soft water would be differentiated by a pH level, where if your water pH is too high, then your water will be more on the soft side, whereas if it is too low, then your water would be acidic. So you need to maintain a good pH level in your water, as well as other parameters that are tested in drinking water quality.
Myezo, what's the process of treating water from our dams and making it drinkable for what is essentially quite a cheap price? Some will say it's expensive, but what is the process in the city of Cape Town? As Kevin says, we have access to good quality water, but that still goes through a filtration and a process through the city. What is that process that the city takes it through?
So at this stage with our treatment plant, we still follow a conventional water treatment process, whereby we first condition the raw water with treatment chemicals. Let me just say first, we characterize the raw water quality, which will determine the required treatment process to remove any offending determinants in raw water, so that the water becomes safe to drink. So we start with conditioning, where we remove all suspended solids, as well as turbidity in drinking water. Then this is followed by a sedimentation, filtration process, as well as, so the filtration process removes any residual from the previous stage, where water goes through sand filters, and all residual smaller particles left would be trapped by the sand. Then it goes to disinfection process, where now we also disinfect any viruses, pathogens that may exist in our water.
Yeah. Let me go to Candice Jansen now, who is a water sommelier, and I follow her content on social media. It's very educational, and I have spoken to you before about water becoming very popular also as a lifestyle decision if you have the means and the money. Yes, we have provinces, yes, we have municipalities where the drinking water that comes out of the tap is not of a good quality. But is there fear factor creeping in with all our water woes in South Africa that people are gravitating towards bottled water, Candice?
Certainly. I have requests every day, people saying they don't trust their tap water anymore. And so they want to resort to bottled water, but that isn't a solution. It really isn't. It's about understanding your tap water and that you have many means to treat your own tap water, to make that taste better by filtering that, by understanding what your filter does. But then there is the taste element to bottled water, right? So different water sources are going to taste different. They've got different mineralities, different geographical characteristics. And so they do taste different. But it is, I don't want to say that it's a lifestyle element. It's a good introduction to people understanding their tap water better. You bring them into a space where they can talk about tap water and bottled water and what the differences are, and you won't believe how far that goes in them wanting to discover their tap water better.
Maybe and cheers. I have a glass of water which I got from our kitchen, municipal tap.
Beautiful.
It tastes fine. There's maybe a little bit of a metallic element there. Maybe that's from the pipe system in our building, but I trust our water. What should water taste like? Maybe I'm spoiled here in the city of Cape Town. Lived here all my life. When I go to other places around the country and I taste the water, there is a difference in taste. But what should water taste like? Water doesn't taste like nothing, Candice. No. I just don't know how to describe that taste.
We have different taste preferences, as with anything. So tap water is certainly not the enemy. There are many people who love the tap water. There's also nostalgia involved. People from Limpopo love the taste of home water. That's really important. So you've got to find a water that you love for taste. But I suppose the driving and the undertone is that we have to have safe water, because essentially that's what we're paying for, whether it be tap water or bottled water. We want safe quality water first. And then we have the freedom to discover the nuance of water and say, hey, what do we actually like the taste?
Professor Kevin Winter, we spoke to Dr. Leslie Petrick last week, emeritus professor in chemistry at the University of the Western Cape, talking about sewage outflows into our oceans, the call for greater recycling of water into a potable water supply. Would constant recycling of water through a filtration or a cleansing process, would that impact the quality, the taste, the way we relate to water at all? Kevin?
Yeah, I think it probably will, because the city of Cape Town, as probably is well known now, is embarking on probably one of the largest reuse treatment plants in the world, in actual fact. And we don't know whether it's going to go through yet, but it will be a treatment of wastewater. And that's a very important step that the city's taking. Partly it has to, because we're an expanding city and we need another at least 70 to 100 million liters of water per day as a result of using reused water. And that water is going to go through a very sophisticated multi-barrier system, which will treat that water, and it will require, in fact, the city to be putting minerals back into that water. And that's one of the things that is around this hardness, softness that you brought up earlier on, Lester. When you go to the Northern Cape, you're often drawing water from the ground, and it has calcium and magnesium in it, which makes it very hard water. And it was some of the parameters that were referred to earlier on. And these minerals will have to come back into the water. It will treat that water to such an extent that it'll actually be water that has actually lost some of those minerals that we enjoy. And Candice spoke about early on about what is that water that we really do enjoy. It usually will be because it has got some minerals in it that actually we quite like, and the calcium in it that we quite like, even a sulfate in it, which we quite like to have in our water. And this system will actually treat that water to a very, very high quality standard. I've seen some of the developments at the Zandvliet wastewater treatment plant already, which impressed me hugely with the way in which it's treating that wastewater. But of course, the real responsibility and accountability lies here, not only in our testing facilities, which are pretty robust, but the ability to be able to know when that water quality changes, and the alarm bells that will go off and will enable users of water to know that actually there's a warning out there and that we shouldn't be drinking water at this particular moment. But to come back to your thing, your question just now around what Leslie Petrick and others are doing in looking at water which is coming through our marine outlets, going into the sea, and they do certainly have an odor around them right now. In fact, there are neighbors complaining hugely about it across the Millerton and also across the Mully Point area at the moment. And there's got to be an alternative there, and the alternative of actually putting our wastewater into sea is just not on. We can't go with that old adage from way back in the 1960s that the solution to pollution is dilution. We've known the consequences. We cannot continue to do that. And so alternatives are being sought in the city right now to try and deal with that. But Leslie and others are right in raising this alarm in terms of the water quality coming into our oceans and our rivers.
Myezo, John in Woodstock says, living in Woodstock, sometimes water there has a very chlorinated taste. Is this an issue? Also, what is the need for added chlorine in our municipal tap water, Myezo?
So as I said, one of the treatment process is disinfection. So as raw water characteristics, sometimes they come with pathogens, viruses, and other microorganisms or impurities that are very too small to treat with other chemicals. So we add chlorine to disinfect or to kill all those bacteria in drinking water.
And if a resident finds
a
a greater taste of that chlorine in their municipal water, is that they're close to the source of where that water was treated, or why are they tasting that added chlorine?
So we have a defined limit in terms of dosing chlorine, which at acceptable levels. So that is in terms of SENS 241. City of Cape Town doses up to a maximum of 1 milligrams per liter, which is very low. So if you are very close to a dosing point, then that water would taste a little bit of chlorine. So while we have a big distribution network, when we dose, we want to ensure that there is residual at the end of the network. So
Candice,
but it is still within limits.
You have a confidant here that too loves water. Lest I love water, but it has to have a fresh minerality. Pellegrino is my favorite. Evian tastes like it has soap in it. Karoo water brand is great too, although I haven't seen it in ages. Tap water in my area of Cape Town, unfortunately, tastes like mud and gives me cramps. People are buying water, as you say, a touch of nostalgia, preferences in taste, preferences in viscosity as well, and people have a taste for different types of water, and that's what you do in your job as a water sommelier.
Yeah, so we're trying to just create that understanding that there is different tastes and how those come about. If I could just circle back, I love the conversation about chlorine out of tap waters, because for me, I always communicate that this is a very healthy sign that the system works, right? It's meant to be there. And there's so many things you can do at home to remove those chlorine elements, whether it be boiling the water, leaving it out for a couple of hours, putting it in the freezer, lots of things that you can do apart from filtration to remove that, to give you better tasting water. And then I also have to agree, circling back with Kevin as well, there are some bad brands in the market. So people have got to be conscious, although we're buying water for taste, you don't want to buy brands that are overnight brands that you've never seen before, that aren't tested, that aren't accredited, they're not held accountable. And the truth is that we have lots of this in the market. Yeah. Somebody starts up a brand, it's somebody's borehole down the road, they've got a friend at one of these like shopping outlets. You laugh, but this is the truth of it. It's madness.
I have an ethical opposition to what is now a multi-billion-dollar market in bottled water. You recently spoke on one of your channels on a new brand. I think it's called Liquid Death? Liquid
correct.
Death. It's been valuated at hundreds of millions of US dollars in investment interest. The only thing that really stands out for me is that it is in a can and it has a gold foil lid. But it's been valuated at hundreds of millions of US dollars. I have an ethical opposition to water being commodified in this particular aspect, Candice.
Correct. So Liquid Death is valued at 1.4 billion US dollars at present. It is water in a can. Their hashtag is death to plastic. It is natural water, but as far as I know, again, the source has changed between last year and this year. And it is a marketing business. It's built purely on the back of marketing as opposed to putting the water information first. So they'll say it's mountain water. The cans that I have that I brought over from the US, for example, they don't have the mineral analysis on it. It's got the source address, but doesn't say anything about the water itself. So unless you're going to go and dig through research to find out, hang on, what am I drinking? You're not going to know. You're buying it purely on this craze.
Kevin, I'll have you have the last word. And I think you share my moral and ethical opposition to a water industry. Yes, it's necessary in municipalities where municipal water quality is insufficient and people have to go to the retail stores and through these reverse osmosis operations, maybe to get a little bit of peace of mind that what they're drinking and consuming is healthy. But your thoughts on this multi-billion-dollar global market in what should be a basic human resource in our constitution is a basic human right, the access to quality water, Kevin?
Yeah, indeed. And of course, we as citizens and now looking beyond just Cape Town, because there are some very, very serious problems in other parts of the country. Our water has deteriorated considerably in terms of its drinking quality since 2014, when we had the first blue drop reporting at that stage. Our water quality has dropped by almost 50% across the country in terms of its quality. In other words, in terms of happiness, coming to Happiness Day, you take water and you don't know whether that's actually is going to be safe to drink or even taste well as also. So happiness is not lying in a glass of water that you do not have any confidence in terms of its quality. But I think it's everyone is trying to make profits from something. But out of water, I share that same ethical feeling that you've positioned yourself as well, Lester. We should be holding our municipalities increasingly accountable for delivering safe water. We cannot afford, with a country as divided as we are economically, to have water dispensed in a bottle. People cannot afford that, nor can we afford tankers that are supplying water to our cities. That's an absolute no-no. And we've got to really get our city councils, our municipalities to actually give us clean water, because that's what's in the Constitution, and demand it, and demand the skills and financial investment. This is the most prime area of resources that we need to be investing in this country, second to none. And yet it's often falls way down the line in terms of priorities and investment. So it's up to the citizens now to really hold our municipalities accountable, and the Department of Water and Sanitation.
Professor Kevin Winter, really appreciate your time. Myezo Poyo, Head of Operations in Bulk Water in the city of Cape Town. And Candice Jansen, I find your social media accounts absolutely fascinating, not just how much infuriating high prices people are paying for water, but also the science of minerals and viscosity. It's absolutely fascinating. You can find Candice on social media. Tag is @WaterSommelier. You can just simply search Candice Jansen, Water Sommelier. Really appreciate your time.